Stand up, right now. I can't, the man says. I'm paralyzed. You were walking before we pulled up. I've been disabled for 15 years. I don't believe you. I'm a United States Army veteran. That doesn't matter. Those words were spoken to a 70-year-old man in a wheelchair on his own front porch on a quiet morning that was supposed to be peaceful. This is the story of Matt. And what happened next was caught on camera. The sun was warm that morning. Not hot, not cold. Perfect. Birds were singing. The sky was clear. The kind of day where nothing bad should happen. That's what Matt thought as he rolled his wheelchair onto his front porch. He'd lived in that house for over 20 years. Everyone knew him. The mailman waved every morning. Kids called him Mr. Matt. Sometimes they stopped by after school. He always had candy ready. Matt was quiet, kind, never caused trouble. But most importantly, Matt was a soldier. For 18 years, he wore the uniform of the United States Army. He went where he was told. He fought where he was sent. He saw things no human should ever see. War broke his body, and it broke parts of his soul. He lost friends overseas, held dying soldiers in his arms, carried those memories home. People called him a hero, thanked him for his service, shook his hand, but they never saw the damage. His spine was destroyed. His legs slowly stopped working. Surgery after surgery, therapy after therapy. Nothing helped. By 55, Matt could no longer walk. The wheelchair became his legs. 15 years. 15 long years. Rolling instead of walking. Adjusting to a body that didn't work anymore. Some days were harder than others. Some days he missed walking to the mailbox. Some days he just wanted to stand. But Matt never complained. He paid his taxes, followed the law, minded his business. So when he sat on his porch that morning, beneath a faded American flag he refused to take down, he had no idea his life was about to change. Then a car pulled up. Matt didn't recognize it. Two men stepped out. Dark uniforms, badges, ICE agents. Their names were Enoch and Brian. Enoch was in charge, senior agent, calling the shots. Brian was newer and wearing a body camera. That camera would change everything. They walked onto Matt's property. Matt looked up from his wheelchair, confused, nervous. He'd never broken the law, never even gotten a ticket. Why were ICE agents here? Enoch walked straight up to him. No greeting, no explanation. He looked down at Matt, cold eyes, no kindness. Then he said it. He accused Matt of faking his disability. Claimed Matt had been walking until he saw their car. Claimed the wheelchair was an act. 15 years in a wheelchair. 5,475 days. Doctors knew. Neighbors knew. Everyone knew. But in seconds, Enoch decided Matt was lying. No evidence. No proof. Just a decision. Stand up, Enoch ordered. Matt explained calmly. I can't. My legs don't work. I'm paralyzed. I'm a veteran. I'm an American citizen. It didn't matter. Prove it, Enoch said. Get out of the chair. Matt offered a solution. My medical records are inside. My ID too. Someone can bring them. Problem solved. Enoch refused. He wouldn't look, wouldn't wait, wouldn't check. He'd already decided who Matt was, and it was happening on camera. Brian stood nearby, watching, feeling something was wrong. Enoch noticed. He turned to Brian. Leave. Brian didn't move. He stayed, silent, still, his body camera rolling. Every word, every demand, every accusation. If Brian had left, there would be no proof. Just Matt's word against an ICE agent. But Brian stayed. Picture this. A 70-year-old black man, disabled, a veteran, on his own porch, in his own wheelchair, being ordered to stand when his legs physically cannot. Neighbors watching, the flag behind him, the same flag he served under, the same flag friends died under. Enoch kept pushing, kept demanding proof. Matt couldn't stand. No amount of willpower could make his legs work again. But Enoch didn't care. Or worse, he did. Eventually, Enoch left. No arrest, no apology, just humiliation and trauma. Matt couldn't sleep. Government vehicles triggered panic. The fear followed him home. But Matt was a soldier, and soldiers fight. The Bodycam footage told the truth. Clear video, clear audio, no denying it. Matt filed a lawsuit, $800,000. Not for greed, for accountability. In court, the evidence crushed them. medical records, military records, citizenship documents. Everything Matt said was true. Everything Enoch ignored was real. The court ruled for Matt. $800,000 awarded. But money can't erase trauma. Can't give back dignity. What it did do was expose the truth. But this story isn't over. Because the bodycam footage revealed something even darker. Something that raises terrifying questions about power profiling and what happens when no one is watching. The bodycam video leaked. Online first, then everywhere. Millions of views overnight. People watched a disabled veteran ordered to stand when he physically couldn't. They watched the disbelief, the power, the silence, and they asked the same question. How does this happen in America? Veterans groups reacted first. Anger, disbelief, rage. This man served our country. He lost his ability to walk. And this is how he's treated? Social media ignited. Hashtags trended. Clips were slowed down, replayed, analyzed frame by frame. Every pause, every word, every second of humiliation. And then something else became clear. This wasn't just about Matt. This was about authority without accountability. ICE released a statement. Short, carefully worded, emotionless. They claimed the encounter was under review. They said they took concerns seriously. They promised internal evaluation. No apology. Not to Matt. Not to his family. Just procedure. Just paperwork. But the public wasn't satisfied. People wanted names. And they already had one. Agent Enoch. The man who ordered a paralyzed veteran to stand. The man who refused to check medical records. Refused identification. Refused common sense. The man who tried to silence the camera. Then came the question everyone asked. What happened to him? ICE wouldn't say. They refused interviews. Dodged reporters. Declined to comment on discipline. No confirmation of suspension. No confirmation of termination. Just silence. And silence speaks. Matt watched all of this from home. The attention was overwhelming. He didn't ask to go viral. Didn't want fame. He wanted peace. But peace never came. Because the footage followed him everywhere. Strangers recognized him. Some thanked him. Some cried. Others asked a question that haunted him. What if there hadn't been a camera? Matt didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone already knew. Behind the scenes, lawyers were working. Not just Matt's. The government's too. Because this wasn't just a lawsuit. It was a liability nightmare. Civil rights violations. Disability discrimination. Unlawful detention threats. And worst of all, the footage was undeniable. No edits. No missing audio. Just raw truth. In court, the defense tried to minimize it. Called it a misunderstanding. A mistaken assumption. But the judge wasn't buying it. Neither was the jury. They watched the video. They saw the wheelchair. Heard the demands. They saw a man stripped of dignity on his own property. The verdict came down hard. $800,000. Public loss. A legal stain. But here's the part no one talks about. Money doesn't fix trauma. Matt still flinched at sirens. Still panicked at government vehicles. Still replayed the moment he was told to stand. A command that felt impossible. Command that felt cruel. And then something unexpected happened. Brian, the agent with the bodycam, quietly disappeared from the story. No press interviews. No statements. Just absence. People noticed. Why did he stay filming? Why didn't he intervene? Was he a silent hero? Or just a witness who followed orders? Online debates exploded. Some praised him for not turning off the camera. Others asked why he didn't stop it. The truth? No one knew. Because Brian never spoke. Meanwhile, requests for records flooded in. FOIA requests, internal complaints, prior misconduct allegations. Journalists dug deep, and what they found raised alarms. Patterns. Not identical cases, but familiar behaviors. Aggressive assumptions. Quick accusations. Dismissed explanations. Not just one agent. Not just one moment. This case became a symbol, not of one mistake, but of a system that moves fast and listens slow. A system where authority can override humanity in seconds. And without a camera, there's no rewind. Matt tried to move on. He focused on his health, his neighbors, his quiet mornings. But the American flag still hung behind him. Still faded. Still waving. A symbol of pride and pain. Because serving a country doesn't guarantee protection from it. And here's where things take a darker turn. Because months after the settlement, a new detail surfaced. Something buried in reports. Something most people missed. A complaint filed before Matt's encounter. Another disabled man. Another accusation. Another dismissed explanation. Different city. Same agency. Similar language. Suddenly, this wasn't an isolated incident. It looked like a warning, and investigators began asking a terrifying question. How many times did this happen when no one was filming? I stayed quiet. Again, no press conference. No reforms announced. No public accountability. Just silence. And silence protects someone. So now the question isn't just what happened to Matt. The real question is this. Who else was treated this way? Who didn't have a camera? Who didn't get believed? Who didn't survive the encounter? It started quietly. A reporter filing a routine request. Then another. Then another. Freedom of Information Act requests. Internal complaints. Use of force reports. Civil rights grievances. They weren't looking for Matt. They were looking for ICE. And what came back wasn't empty. There were files. Lots of them. Redacted names. Black lines everywhere. But the language was familiar. Too familiar. Subject appeared suspicious. Claimed disability. Refused to comply. Officer believed deception was present. Different cities. Different dates. Same words. Same assumptions. One complaint stood out. Filed 2 years before Matt's case. A man in his 60s. Mobility impaired. Stopped outside his apartment. He said he couldn't stand. They told him to prove it. Sound familiar? No bodycam footage. The complaint was dismissed. Another report. A woman with a visible medical brace. Pulled aside at a checkpoint. She explained. They didn't listen. She cried. They searched her anyway. No lawsuit. No video. Just a file that went nowhere. And then came the most disturbing part. Several of these complaints mentioned the same supervisor chain, same oversight office, same outcome, no violation found. Again, and again, and again. This wasn't one bad decision. It looked like a culture where suspicion came first, humanity came last, and accountability, optional. Veterans advocacy groups noticed. Disability rights organizations noticed. They began connecting dots, pressuring lawmakers, demanding hearings. They asked a simple question. How many people were hurt before Matt had a camera? I still didn't respond. Not publicly, but behind closed doors. Meetings happened. Emails flew. Damage control. Because Matt's case had done something dangerous. It made people look. And then someone else stepped forward. Quietly. An ICE employee. Not an agent. Administrative. They spoke anonymously. And what they said changed everything. They claimed complaints were often handled internally. Translated? Buried. They said discipline was rare. Transfers were common. Problem agents weren't fired. They were moved. New cities. New supervisors. Same badge. And then came the sentence that froze investigators. If there's no video, it's almost impossible for civilians to win. Almost. Matt heard about this. He sat in his living room, wheelchair by the window, the same porch where it all happened. And for the first time, he didn't feel like a victim. He felt like evidence. He agreed to testify, not in court, in public, panels, interviews, closed-door meetings with advocates. Every time he spoke, the room went quiet, because you couldn't argue with his body. You couldn't argue with the footage. You couldn't argue with the truth. But not everyone supported him. Online backlash grew. Comments appeared. He should have just stood. They were doing their job. He was exaggerating. It hurt, deeply. But Matt kept going. Because if he stopped, someone else would be next. Then came the rumor. Quiet at first. Then louder. Agent Enoch had been reassigned. Not fired. Not disciplined publicly. Reassigned. New role. Less visibility. Same paycheck. ICE refused to confirm it. Again. But reporters kept digging. And then they found something else. A training document. Internal. Leaked. It emphasized behavioral indicators of deception. Body language. Hesitation. Inconsistencies. No mention of disabilities. No safeguards. Just instincts. Just assumptions. Advocates were furious. How do you instinct paralysis? How do you read a wheelchair? No answers. Just more silence. Matt read the document. Slowly. Carefully. And then he said something that stuck with everyone. They didn't see a wheelchair. They saw a lie. Pressure mounted. Congressional offices called. Civil rights groups demanded investigations. ICE was cornered. And finally, they announced an internal review. Not public. Not transparent. Internal. Again. But this time something was different. A senator requested records. Unredacted. Subpoena-level authority. ICE couldn't say no. And what those records contained had the potential to expose everything. Because buried in those files was a list. Names, dates, complaints, and one category no one expected. Disability-related encounters. How many names were on that list? ICE hasn't said. But someone who saw it described it as longer than it should ever be. They called it the list. And it was worse than anyone imagined. When the senator's office received the files, they expected redactions. They expected delays. They didn't expect volume. Hundreds of pages. Years of complaints. Dozens of names. All labeled under one category. Disability-related encounters. Some cases were brief. 2 paragraphs. No follow-up. Others were long. Detailed. Disturbing. People in wheelchairs. People with canes. People with braces. People with speech impairments. Stopped. Questioned. Disbelieved. Over and over again. The language was chilling. Subject claimed disability. Officer suspected deception. Non-compliance observed. Claimed. Suspected. Observed. Never confirmed. One case stood out immediately. A man with advanced MS stopped at a bus terminal. He couldn't stand without assistance. Agents demanded he do exactly that. When he fell, they wrote he was resisting. No camera footage. The complaint was closed. Another file. A woman with a prosthetic leg. Pulled aside during a routine check. She explained. They ordered her to remove it. Publicly. She refused. They detained her for 2 hours. No discipline recorded. The senator read every page. And when they finished, they said one sentence. This isn't negligence. It's normalization. The findings didn't stay quiet. A whistleblower leaked the existence of the list. Not the documents. Just the fact that it existed. That was enough. Headlines exploded. ICE kept internal list of disabled encounters. Veterans and disabled flagged in internal records. Bodycams rarely reviewed. Files closed internally. The public reacted instantly. Outrage, shock, anger. Because Matt's case was no longer rare. It was representative. Civil rights lawyers lined up. Class action lawsuits were discussed. Disability rights groups demanded federal oversight. Veterans organizations called it a betrayal. And suddenly, ICE wasn't just defending one agent. They were defending an entire system. Matt was asked to speak again, this time on Capitol Hill. He rolled into the building slowly, past marble walls, past flags. The same flag he once sat beneath on his porch. He spoke plainly. They didn't see my service. They didn't see my disability. They saw suspicion. The room was silent. Then came the question. Do you believe this was personal? Matt paused, then said, No, that's what scares me. Behind the scenes, pressure intensified. ICE leadership held emergency meetings. Public statements were drafted. Apologies were considered. But something stopped them, because issuing one apology meant acknowledging many wrongs. And then came the internal fracture. Emails leaked. Senior officials arguing. One message stood out. If we admit fault here, the floodgates open. Another replied, They already have. The agency announced reforms, updated training, new sensitivity modules, expanded Bodycam usage. But critics weren't convinced, because reforms on paper don't erase years of silence. Then, quietly, something else happened. Agent Enoch's name appeared again. Not in a press release, not in a statement, in a personnel update. He had been moved, not reassigned, promoted, different division, higher pay grade, no public explanation. The news broke late at night, and when people saw it, they exploded. How does this happen? How is this justice? How is this accountability? ICE refused to comment. Again, Matt heard the news the next morning. He sat on his porch. Same chair, same flag. He didn't look surprised. He looked tired, because now the story wasn't about mistakes. It was about protection. Advocates doubled down. They demanded names. They demanded resignations. They demanded transparency. And finally, a congressional committee scheduled a formal hearing. Public, televised, subpoenas issued. ICE leadership ordered to testify under oath. The stakes were massive. Careers, reputations, funding, and possibly criminal referrals. But the biggest bomb hadn't dropped yet. Because just days before the hearing, a source contacted investigators, a former ICE trainer. They claimed the training manual was worse than anyone knew, that officers were taught to distrust disability claims, that wheelchairs were described as potential concealment tools. If that testimony was true, this wasn't about rogue agents. It was policy. The hearing began on a Tuesday morning. Cameras everywhere, lights too bright, silence too loud. ICE leadership sat at the table, suits pressed, faces tight, hands folded like nothing was wrong. But everyone watching knew something was coming. The first witness wasn't Matt. It was the trainer, former ICE instructor, 10 years on the inside, sworn in, mic adjusted. Then one sentence changed everything. We were taught to assume deception first. The room shifted. He explained slowly, carefully, PowerPoint slides, training manuals, internal language, disability claims labeled unverified assertions, wheelchairs listed under mobility concealment risks, officers instructed to challenge inconsistencies. Even when no crime existed, a congresswoman leaned forward. Define challenge. The trainer swallowed. Escalation. Commands. Pressure. The next question hit harder. Were officers disciplined for being wrong? The answer was quiet. No. Then came the Bodycam issue. Why footage wasn't reviewed. Why complaints disappeared. Why patterns were ignored. The trainer didn't dodge it. They didn't want patterns. Patterns create liability. Gasps filled the room, because now it was clear. Matt's case wasn't an exception. It was a result. ICE leadership was called next. They denied intent, denied policy, denied knowledge. But then, emails appeared on the screen. Internal, time-stamped, signed. One line was read aloud. Disabled claims slow enforcement. Push through. No one spoke. Then Matt was wheeled in. No introduction needed. He adjusted the mic himself, looked straight ahead, and spoke. I didn't ask for special treatment, he said. I asked to be believed. Pause. I offered proof. They didn't want it. Another pause. I served this country longer than the man who humiliated me has worn a badge. The room stayed silent. A representative asked him how the incident changed his life. Matt didn't dramatize it. That made it worse. I don't sit outside anymore. That was it. The hearing lasted hours. By the end, the narrative collapsed. No rogue agent defense. No misunderstanding excuse. This was structural, documented, proven. Within weeks, the fallout began. ICE announced policy changes. Mandatory disability verification protocols. Independent Bodycam review boards. Civilian oversight for complaints. Sounded good, but words weren't enough anymore. Then came accountability. Quietly, Agent Enoch was placed on administrative leave, then terminated. No ceremony, no press conference, just a line in a report. Employment concluded. More followed. Supervisors reassigned. Training manuals rewritten. Federal funding tied to compliance. The system didn't collapse, but it cracked. Matt's settlement stood $800,000, but he donated a portion to disability advocacy groups, to veteran legal funds, to people who never got a camera. Reporters asked him if he felt vindicated. He shook his head. This wasn't about winning. Then he said, it was about stopping it. The porch is quiet now. Same house, same flag, but Matt sits outside again. Some days, not for long, just enough to feel the sun. His story is taught now, in law schools, in ethics courses, as a warning, as a line. Do not cross this, because justice didn't come from power. It came from a camera that didn't turn off, from a man who stayed, from a veteran who refused to be erased.